My name is Aaron, and I live in a quiet suburban area that borders a stretch of thick trees people around here just call the Green Patch. It's not a forest, really, just an overgrown section of land about half a mile long that separates our homes from a restricted reservoir. Nobody talks much about the place. There are faded no trespassing signs, a tall wire fence, and cameras that always seem to point nowhere. For as long as I can remember, that patch of woods has been my running route. I'm on the cross-country team, and the winding dirt trail through those trees gives me the perfect mix of peace and challenge. But something about that place has always been slightly off. The silence is too heavy, even during the day, and sometimes, the air smells faintly metallic after it rains. It was one of those gray summer evenings when everything began. The clouds were swollen and bruised, thunder grumbling from far off, warning that a storm was crawling closer. I finished my run as the first raindrops started to fall, cutting through the woods and along the old fence that bordered the reservoir. That's when I heard it, a single sound, sharp and misplaced against the rain. A whisper. It came from the other side of the fence. I stopped, breathing hard, and squinted through the gaps in the chain links. There was movement by the water's edge. Someone was standing there, a woman, barefoot, her long hair plastered to her face. I called out, asking if she was okay, but she didn't respond. She just turned her head slowly toward me, her eyes catching what little light was left in the storm-dark air. I didn't wait around. The storm was getting worse, and the way she stared made something in me tighten with unease. I sprinted home, the thunder chasing my footsteps. By nightfall, the rain had become a full-on downpour. I always sleep with my window open to hear the rain, but that night it was deafening. I was about to drift off when I heard something else beneath the roar of thunder, a voice. It was faint at first, but soon, it became unmistakable. "Please. I'm cold." I froze. The voice was coming from right below my bedroom window. I threw the blanket aside and ran for the front door. The storm was wild, the wind driving sheets of rain across the yard. I followed the sound, rounding the side of the house until I saw her, huddled beneath my window, her hair dripping, her clothes clinging to her skin. The same woman from the reservoir. "Are you okay?" I shouted over the thunder. She didn't move at first. Then, she slowly lifted her head. Her face looked wrong. Her eyes reflected light like an animal's, glowing faintly even through the rain. She stood, her bare feet sinking into the mud. Before I could react, she bolted toward me. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. She was fast, unnaturally fast, but at the last second, she stopped just short of me. Her head tilted as if she were studying me. Then, with a sound like a choked laugh, she turned and sprinted into the trees. I didn't chase her. I ran inside and slammed the door, locking every window I could find. My dad thought I'd imagined it, said maybe it was some runaway or someone in distress. He called it in to the local police, but when they came by the next morning, they didn't find anyone. For a few days, I managed to convince myself it had just been a strange, unsettling encounter. Until 3 nights later, when the storm came back. I woke up to tapping, slow, deliberate tapping, on the glass of my bedroom window. My heart nearly stopped. I turned my head, and through the pale light of lightning, I saw her face pressed against the windowpane. Her lips were moving, though I couldn't hear the words. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, her hair dripping water down the glass. Then, just as I lunged for the light, the next flash of lightning revealed something that made my stomach twist. Her reflection wasn't just on the outside of the glass. For a split second, I saw another face behind her. And both of them were smiling.
The night that storm rolled over Black Creek, no one in town could have predicted what it would bring. Daniel Rivers wasn't the kind of man who scared east. 39 years old, a park ranger for nearly a decade, and someone who'd seen enough storms to know when to head in early. But that night, something felt off. The air was too still before the thunder started. and even the animals had gone silent hours earlier. He was stationed at a small ranger cabin by the edge of the creek, about 3 miles from the nearest main road. It wasn't much, just a wooden structure with a tin roof and a single lantern hanging on the porch. The kind of place that creaked when the wind changed direction. He'd planned to stay the night and check the nearby trails for storm damage the next morning. By 9 o'clock, the storm had fully settled in. The rain came down in sheets, rattling the windows so violently that Daniel thought they might burst. He sat near the wood stove, sipping stale coffee and listening to the thunder echo through the forest. But between the roars of the storm, he could swear he heard something else, a dull knocking at first. He thought it was the wind slamming a branch against the side of the cabin. But then it came again. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. Daniel froze. No one ever came out there this late, especially not in weather like that. He grabbed his flashlight and walked toward the door. The knocks came again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice barely audible over the wind. No answer. He hesitated for a few seconds before opening the door. Rain immediately drenched him, his flashlight beam cutting through the storm. And then he saw her. A young woman stood just a few feet away, completely soaked, her long hair plastered to her pale face. She wore a thin white dress that clung to her like a second skin. Her lips were trembling, and she looked terrified. "Please," she said, her voice almost drowned by thunder. "I need somewhere to stay. My car broke down by the bridge." Daniel quickly ushered her inside, locking the door behind her. She shivered uncontrollably as he handed her a blanket and motioned toward the wood stove. "You're lucky you found this place," he said, trying to sound calm. "There's no reception out here." Storm came in fast. She didn't respond right away. She just stared into the fire with wide, unfocused eyes. Her breathing was slow and shallow, almost like she was in a trance. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. "Clara," she said softly. "I didn't mean to come this far. I think something followed me." That made Daniel's stomach drop. "Followed you?" She nodded slowly, still staring into the flames. "It was in the water. I saw it when my car hit the bridge. Something with eyes. Bright eyes." Daniel frowned. He'd heard locals talk about Black Creek for years. Stories of drownings, of people seeing figures in the fog. But he'd always dismissed them as campfire tales. He tried to calm her down, assuring her she was safe, that she must have been seeing reflections or animals. But deep down, a part of him didn't believe his own words. As the hours passed, the storm grew worse. Thunder shook the cabin so hard that dust fell from the ceiling beams. At some point, Daniel realized that Clara hadn't moved in almost an hour. She was sitting perfectly still, her blanket fallen to the floor, her eyes fixed on the window. He followed her gaze and felt his chest tighten. Outside the window, through the sheets of rain, a faint silhouette stood by the tree line. It looked human, but its proportions were wrong to tall. Too thin. Daniel quickly turned off the lantern, plunging the cabin into darkness. Clara whispered, "It found me." He told her to stay quiet and grabbed his flashlight, but when he turned back toward her, she was gone. The door creaked open, swinging violently in the wind. He shouted, running into the storm. The rain blinded him as he followed the muddy path toward the creek. Lightning flashed for a split second. He saw her standing in the water. Her arms were outstretched, her face tilted toward the sky, mouth open as if screaming, but no sound came out. Then something else surfaced behind her, something enormous, shapeless, and black. Daniel sprinted toward her. But before he could reach the water, lightning struck a tree nearby, sending him sprawling to the ground. When he looked up again, Clara was gone. No ripples, no sign of her anywhere. The next morning, rescue teams found Daniel unconscious by the creek, his flashlight still clutched in his hand. He was taken to the hospital, muttering about a woman and eyes in the water. They never found any car near the bridge, and they never found any woman named Clara. But here's the part that no one could explain. When the police went back to the cabin to collect Daniel's belongings, they found a wet footprint trail leading from the front door to the wood stove. And near the stove, written in the ash, were 3 words, "She is back." The storm that night had been raging for hours, drowning the small highway town of Birch Hollow in sheets of relentless rain. Most of the locals had taken shelter early, but Ethan Clark wasn't local. He was a traveling photographer, passing through on his way to a coastal shoot. And by the time he found the motel on the edge of town, his car was nearly floating. The neon sign flickered above the door. Pennyview Motel Vacancies. Inside, the lobby smelled of damp carpet and stale coffee. The woman at the front desk, an older lady with a cigarette voice, slid him a key with barely a glance. Room 7. End of the hall. Don't go out tonight, honey. That storm's not right. Ethan smiled weakly, thanked her, and made his way to the room. He wasn't easily spooked, but the atmosphere felt heavy, like the storm wasn't just outside, but pressing in from all sides. He brushed it off as exhaustion. Room 7 was small, but clean enough. A single bed, an old TV, and a humming mini-fridge. Thunder rolled as he unpacked his camera gear. He thought he might capture a few lightning shots through the window before turning in. He set up his tripod and adjusted the focus toward the drenched parking lot. When the next bolt of lightning struck, it illuminated something strange, a figure standing just at the edge of the lot. A woman, long hair whipping in the wind. He blinked and she was gone. Ethan frowned, stepping closer to the window. Maybe it was a trick of the rain. He snapped a few shots anyway and went to check the results on his camera. When he zoomed in, his stomach dropped. There she was, clear as day. Pale face, dark eyes, drenched hair clinging to her cheeks. She was staring directly into his lens. What the hell? Ethan muttered. He looked back at the window. Empty. He tried to shake it off, telling himself maybe she was another guest. Maybe the lens had caught her just as lightning struck. But when he checked the timestamp on the photos, he realized something impossible. The shutter had gone off before the lightning. He decided to distract himself. A hot shower, a snack, maybe some background noise from the TV. By the time he stepped out of the bathroom, the wind had picked up. The door rattled against a frame, and then, faintly, he heard it. A soft knock. He froze. 3 knocks. Deliberate. Measured. The same pattern from the night before the bridge. The same that haunted the Black Creek legend he'd once read about in a local ghost forum. But this was hundreds of miles away. Probably someone drunk, he said to himself. He opened the door. No one was there. Just a storm and a trail of wet footprints leading into his room. Ethan's single quotes as heart pounded as he backed up. The footprints stopped near the bathroom. He could hear dripping water from inside. But he'd already turned the shower off. Slowly, he reached for his camera and raised it toward the open bathroom door. Through the viewfinder, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A woman stood inside, the same one from the photo. Her head tilted unnaturally to one side, eyes black as oil, water pouring from her hair, as if she'd just climbed out of the river. But when he lowered the camera, she wasn't there. The lights flickered violently. The TV turned on by itself, static, roaring, and through the white noise, a voice whispered, barely audible but clear enough to send a chill through him. You saw me. Now you remember. Ethan stumbled back, knocking over the tripod. The photos on his camera scrolled by on their own shot after shot of the woman, closer each time, until the last one filled the screen completely with her face. He grabbed his keys, bolted out of the room, and raced down the hall to the front desk. There's someone in my room, he shouted. The old woman didn't even look surprised. She slowly reached under the counter and pulled out a small, water-damaged photograph. Was it her? She asked, sliding it toward him. Ethan looked down. It was the same woman, same pale face, same dark eyes, but the photo was decades old. That's Lily, the clerk said quietly. She drowned in a Black Creek flood back in '78. Her body was never found. Sometimes, when the storms get bad, she checks in. Ethan's hands trembled. You're saying she? The clerk nodded. Room 7 was hers. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in his car until morning, engine running, eyes on the motel room window. When dawn finally broke and the rain stopped, he gathered his gear and drove off without looking back. 2 days later, Ethan took his film to be developed at a studio in the next town. Most of the photos were blank, washed out from water damage. All except one. The last frame showed his motel room empty. except for a dark silhouette standing by the window, staring out at the rain dot, and scratched faintly into the film's surface were the words, "See you at the next storm."